begin to talk about I don't know what you think. What you think about the old Loki. Episode 1 kicks off, and it was written by Michael Waldron, who is the creator for Rick and Morty. And if you've watched Rick and Morty, it has a very type of tone, a lot of comedy, those kinds of things. I also think the episode 1, where you see Loki at the end of the Avengers film, he's lost the battle in New York. They give it some of these highlights. He touches that cube, and then he's boom, gone. He's in the desert. And it takes no time at all for the TVA, the Time Variance Authority, to best him. Basically, he's humiliated right from the get-go. They're stripping him down, telling him the rules. You have this funny joke about everything you say, and the little dot matrix printers printing it out. Here, sign here. What? This is ridiculous. This is absurd. And sign again. But sadly, all of that was ruined in the trailer. So I wish I could tell you that I even loved that joke, but it kind of fell to the wayside. But it moves quickly, and you see he's stripped of his Asgardian costume. He is humiliated over again. He has to stare up at a judge. They have all these different rules, but he's still kind of got that bite and that anger that we knew as Loki. So it moves a little bit, and you see different things, and some things are really interesting that they're talked about, and they don't ever matter. And we'll kind of come back on that several episodes along, and you'll see there's things that we like, the internet goes crazy over every little thing, every little Easter egg. There's so many views to be had. They tell you, I found an Easter egg, and half the time they did not find anything. Or they gave you fan service, gave you a little nugget of something that might be in the decades old comic books, but it's irrelevant to the show. And that's the thing you have to remember about Loki. Loki was the first villain in Avengers #1. So he dates back to the 1960s. So there's a lot of material they could pull from, and this is what we got. So that's how things start out. You see the flashback or flash to the sequence with their ominous music and all of that, where this variant has attacked this, and this little girl's there with her little candy bar, and there's comments made about some different things. But we're 10, 12 minutes into this, and they zap the one guy who doesn't have a ticket. We're making jokes about that. You see a lot of talking, a lot of this, a lot of that. We're like 30 minutes into this episode before we get to Mobius, who's played by Owen Wilson, talking to Loki, trying to get him to, come to some sort of analysis to make him realize he's the monster. And he talks about being D.B. Cooper and all that. They start showing him these videos. And then ultimately, of course, Mobius is pulled away and Loki escapes. There's just more of a comedic scene, not really a fight scene, where he takes down the other TVA guy, lady, and that's Hunter B-15. Hunter B-15's taken down, but Loki goes back to the room to watch these videos, because when he goes in the office, he realizes Infinity Stones don't matter here. Kind of creates this almost paradox to all these movies we've been watching. Like, okay, well, none of this really matters. TVA is more powerful than all that. They've got him on his little choke collar to prevent him having any powers. So that's not going to get him anywhere. So he basically concedes, goes back, watches these clips, sees his mom dies, relationships and whatever. And then we get, crying Loki. And, again, I want to make sure I'm really clear here with, not very long. It's very frustrating. So, it's episode 1 just kind of wraps up. We see that there's a shadowy figure and that kind of thing, and that's where we're at. But Loki's like going to play along. He's going to pretend that he's going to cooperate, right? Suddenly he's going to be Ragnarok Loki. He's going to be this nice, peaceful, kind guy. He's going to play along, and I have a hard time with that, to be honest. So, but okay, let's move on. So the second writer is actually a Bones writer. Her name is Alyssa Karasik. And we have the Renaissance Festival attack in the 1980s. We see another Hunter C-20. And then she's attacking their own TVA. Loki's pretending to be an advisor, but he's really just stalling. So you see all of this stuff's progressing. And we end up about, another 30 minutes into this, when basically nothing's gotten done. He's tried to dupe them, pretend that he's somebody. They go back to the library. They're talking about things. He thinks he figured out how the variant moves around. They go to Pompeii because the variant can hide there. And through all of this, we end up going to where the variant's going to be. And we set up a futuristic place, the Roxcart, which is basically like Amazon meets Walmart in the MCU, in the Marvel Comics universe. You're going to have this big fight scene and reveal with the Loki, who turns out to be Lady Loki, right? So we see interesting parts here where Loki has magic, but doesn't use magic. Like, he has magic to dry himself when he goes into the little store, but he doesn't use any magic to fight how Lady Loki's possessed Randy and this big guy, and he doesn't create multiple versions of himself, which he talked about. He doesn't do any of his different illusions that he's talked about. He doesn't really do anything. He uses like his magic to get a vacuum cleaner to hit the guy. I mean, it's just, anyway. He goes through the little garage door opener portal with Lady Loki, and we get to episode 3, which is written, to me, the worst episode in the entire series at this point, by Basha K. Ali, which you'll hear me talk about because she's in charge of Miss Marvel, which is a new series with the new Pakistani Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan. And this is an episode where basically a lot of walking, a lot of talking, and they're on this planet. They're trapped there. They've got their little he's got the time device. She's blaming him for getting them there, which I think is weird because it's her time device. So it's her pre-programmed thing. Like, I'm not sure why he would know which button to push, which natural disaster to go hide in. He chose the wrong one in her mind. So he's immediately, again, he's submissive. He's not in his costume. She looks like Loki, but he doesn't look like Loki. And there's a lot of walking and talking, some gags that, I don't know. I didn't really care for any of the gags. We did get our first real pause where I had this kind of thing where I watched this show and I watched it again for you guys. And yeah, it was a little rough. So one of my moments that I've gone back to is, let me see if I can get this to play right. I just couldn't believe it. I had my, different moments where I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. It was really rough. So this was one of. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's it. He's such a wuss following her around, and it doesn't make any sense. So this isn't the Loki that attacked New York like 2 minutes ago. This is this guy. Look, watch this. You're so weird. You're so weird. You're so weird. When would Loki ever say you're so weird? When? There's another clip I didn't get it in time for this where he says you're so awesome, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is not the Loki that I signed up for. What am I watching here? Maybe you love the show. You can tell me what you think. I don't know. I'm missing something because it doesn't get any better, and really nothing happens because they're still trapped on the planet. They decide to go on this train, and Loki can't even best a couple guard trains. This is a guy who is, half Frost Giant, raised by Asgardians. Actually, he is Frost Giant, and raised by the Asgardians. He, fought with Thor and Hulk, all these different things, and then suddenly 2 guards on a train. He's having a hard time besting, and they play it up like he was drinking and that kind of thing. But the scene only exists for one reason, and I don't know if you knew this or not. The director of the show, Kate Herron, or Haran, sorry if I pronounce her name wrong, she admitted that the entire purpose of Loki, this is her entire premise. Let me make sure I'll pull the story up for you, because I don't want you to think that I am coming up with this on my own, because this is it. She confirms that her focus was to acknowledge that Loki is bisexual. Here's the little scene that they are referring to where this moment happens. And it's just this little side comment right here. You can see must have been some princesses or perhaps another prince. And he's like, yeah, a little bit of both. I spoke to you, same for you. That's it. That's what this was about. That was her priority, right? She says, from the moment I joined Loki, it was very important for me and my goal to acknowledge Loki was bisexual. It is in part of who he is and who I am too. I know this is a small step, but I'm happy. And heart is so full to say that this is now canon. And she tweeted this. This is what she tweeted. You got that? This is who I am. This is where we are. She's not interested in telling a good story about Loki. She wasn't interested in taking on this project to contribute something to the MCU, expand the MCU. And I'm sure that they gave her instructions. She's got marching orders. Trust me. Some of the directors that have quit different films over the years have told us they have marching orders. We know exactly why they've quit in some of these situations. But you've got to be kidding me. She's more interested in self-inserting herself than she is in producing good content, right? She sees herself in this now. Like, she couldn't connect to Loki. She couldn't relate to Loki until she could make part of her part of him. So, and I assume Lady Loki's the same, right? They're the same character, just a different version in these different timelines and variants and all that. So that's basically the entire. We do learn in episode 3 that the TVA, they're all variants. That's it. It's just an aside comment. And if you're not paying close enough attention, you easily could have missed either of those two little factoids. And we quickly move on to episode 4, which is written by Eric Martin. Now, I kid you not, I've not seen anything from Eric Martin. Eric Martin's big contribution, as I can tell, is that he was a production assistant. You know somebody? Yep, I know the people at Rick and Morty. That's who I worked on. Worked on Rick and Morty. Michael Aldrin's on here. He's doing Loki. He got me a gig to write episode 4. And sorry, Eric, this is a waste of freaking time. Is what this was. So we flash back to a young, no, not younger, really. It's just a different version of when she was taken. Renslayer is going to, it's a younger version in a flashback of when Renslayer, who was just an agent at the time, kidnaps Sylvie when she was a child. And because she somehow created her Nexus event or whatever she's done. That never gets addressed. We never really understand what it is about her, other than maybe she's teaching herself magic. That's alluded to in the series. She's so clever. And it's like at the 12-minute mark of this episode, because it's just chaos, right? So we cut to the real time where all this is where the "you are amazing" part comes, because they're trying to get off the purple planet. They finally get rescued by the TVA because all the little gadget, the little remote control's dead. And I kid you not, they're back and forth. Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston's Loki is, you're a bad friend. You're a bad friend. This is what's in our Marvel show. You're a bad friend. And then they put him in timeout. His timeout is even more ridiculous. His timeout is to be put into a little time cell where he has to relive this moment where he accidentally, no, Loki doesn't do anything on accident. Everything is on purpose, right? No, Loki cut the hair off of Lady Sif. He's now put in a time cell, has to relive this moment where she punches him in the face, kicks him in the genitals over and over and over again. So literally the metaphor of the female beating the man takes like literal representation in this show. This is what's passing as good content. Is it funny maybe for, like, I don't know, first time, second time? Sure, but we all get what's really happening here. But it just keeps going. So they cut back. We're 22 minutes into this or so. Loki's basically in love, right? He's just enamored with her. Like, what's happened? Has she been zapped with a little, their little sticks? Has she been pruned? So that's going on. And then Loki says, takes a moment here to work with Mobius about moving forward and says, will you take a word of a friend? It's this weird. They've known people for what, like a day? The day before he's destroying New York. 2 days? Like, how? I wish I could understand the freaking timeline here. It's so absurd and so stupid. Like, let's just assume a couple days ago, this guy is ripping the eye out of somebody, like with a grin on it. He's attacking and fighting Captain Marvel, ready to massacre a whole bunch of Germans. He's leading an attack on New York City to kill, I don't know how many people. He murdered, obviously, 80 people. I think it's referenced in Avengers when he steals the Tesseract. This guy's a monster. He gets the Tesseract to get away. Or a couple episodes in, a few hours, maybe a day or two, and suddenly he's friends with Mobius. He's in love with this other chick. He's like a U-Haul lesbian. He flipped on a dime at like date number 2, ready to move in with everybody else. Like, this guy's emotions. Like, I don't understand why you're supposed to convince me that he watched some video of his mom, starts crying and weeping, and sees some flashbacks to the rest of what his life could have been, and suddenly he's transformed. Like, that's what it took, a therapy session. We should have sat this guy down for like 5 minutes and shown him what his future could have been, and we wouldn't have had all this stuff with New York. Like, that's what, I mean, it's just, I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry if you're getting this and you're loving this. I've just been in shock. I really have. I couldn't believe how boring these episodes. Nothing's happening. You got 20, 30 minutes of screen time and nothing's happening. Like, there's no fight scene. There's no action. There's nothing really transpiring. So, all right, let me get back on track going through all of this, because there's all of this happening. They're going to get pruned, and they go see the timekeepers. And the timekeeper scene, it was weird because to the audience, to me, it was really clear they're not real. But a fight scene breaks out because the one agent lets them go, and they're fighting for a minute. Of course, Lady Loki is way more powerful than Loki, of course. So she's got girl power, man. She's tearing it up. And then she throws her sword and cuts its head off, and it's a robot. And he's trying to be all sweet to her again. He's all got his U-Haul packed and ready to move in. And then he gets pruned from behind. So he dies, at least on the surface. You think he dies. A few minutes ago, before they took him to the timekeepers, when Mobius shows up with Loki, he gets confronted, and of course Mobius gets pruned. So Mobius is pruned, Loki is pruned. You're supposed to be like, oh. And then Lady Loki has got her little wand on Renslayer after a quick little fight. And that's where the episode 4 ends. And we go into number 5, who's written by another staff writer, Rick and Morty, because that seems to be who we stole all of our talent from for the MCU. Not tons of experience writing, no real superhero. And the translation of humor from Rick and Morty, whatever they were going for, sure didn't arrive in Loki, by the way. Maybe I'm just being too critical, because I don't understand this. This is all this twisty-turny stuff, because our little credit scene shows Loki waking up. He's pruned, but he wakes up. He's on a planet, and he sees other Lokis. So we're 4 episodes in. We finally see little Loki, alligator Loki, cosplay Loki, and black Loki. That's what we see, right? And fans are more excited about that than they have been the whole show. Imagine that, right? A little clip at the end of episode 4 has more internet buzz from more people, in my opinion. All people were talking about is who these Lokis were. We're sick of our Loki. Our Loki's walking around like a UPS man. He's not even dressed for the job anymore. Lady Loki's at least dressed like the character. His costume is gone. It's been gone for hours. We don't even know how long he'll be out of costume, right? So it moves along. We have Loki's running around. And then, of course, Renslayer is being held with a little stick from Lady Loki. And those by the way, if you watch this again and you go from the end of episode 4 into the beginning of episode 5, it's the worst edit of all of them, because the scene was originally where the timekeepers are, and then it's suddenly in the hallway of the TVA. So they can blame the Roni all they want, but that was just awful. I don't know how that got through. They had to have not realized they made that mistake, and then it went through, and there was just no way to get everybody back together again, because it's absurd is what it is. It's freaking absurd. So, okay, where are we at? We're in episode 5. We're on the land of Lokis. Renslayer's just delaying things, making up a story about a ship, all sorts of nonsense. The agents are coming. They basically got Lady Loki. Sylvie's trapped, so she self-prunes. That's what you do. You've done all this, and you're just going to self-prune. You don't know where they go. You don't know. How would she know what's going to happen to her? Like, that's the solution. You've lost your fight. You're not going to try to break out of jail again. You're just going to self-prune. Like, there's no evidence that there's anything after the self-pruning. It's so dumb. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, folks, because you've sat there and listened to talky, plenty of time to explain how some of this crap works, but nope, we just do things and we go on, and you're supposed to just take it and follow it, because there's a bunch of little Lokis to see, and they're going to talk, and then we're going to see other Lokis break in, and a fight's going to break out. But what does our Loki do? What does UPS Loki do? He tiptoes around the fight. Yeah, Loki, who went fisticuffs with Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. He was he given Black Widow what's for, had a little fight that he lost with Hulk. I mean, this is insane. And he's like, oh, I'm going to tiptoe around the action while Alligator Loki eats the hand off the one guy. And we're all supposed to be, all right, whatever. All right. So listen, other than cosplay Loki, it just stunk. because we're supposed to believe like Kid Loki, the child Loki, he's the toughest one of all of them because he actually killed Thor. Like he killed them. So that's why he's in this world, because he's a variant. You're not allowed to kill him. That wasn't what the Loki's purposes are. And Richard E. Grant, who plays the cosplay Loki, the guy with the bright green yellow, he's got the horns, the whole 1960s cliche costume. He's the only one worth watching, in my opinion. It was fantastic because he actually like uses magic, and they're all like, "Oh my gosh, how can he do that? How can he use magic?" Well, first, if you're on a planet, you should have tested out if you can use magic. In fact, they did 5 minutes ago because he conjured a blanket so he could snuggle with Sylvie. That's right. That's right. The guy plucking the eye out of somebody 5 minutes ago to take over New York, murdering I don't know how many millions of people if he could, is ready to snuggle with a different version of himself that he's met like 2 minutes ago. And all they do is fight. He treats him like crap like every 5 minutes. There's no kind words coming out of this woman. She's leading the show. She's barking orders. She's blaming things. They fight. She's better than him. It's just a mess. Show is a mess. Okay. Let's see. They cuddle under their blanket. They have to go face the purple cloud monster, which is called Elias, which actually does exist in the comic book. I don't remember ever reading that, but it's there. So they do all of that. Right. So Richard E. Grant cosplay Loki does his magic and distracts the monster. She is going to use her. She's supposed to be able to touch to enchant someone. Like she can control you if she touches you. But she's going to get with Loki. They're going to hold hands. She's going to touch the purple cloud monster to control it, to open it up, and we're going to see something that's on the other side because it's protecting something else. That's literally the big scheme of the Loki at this point. And that's what happens, and we see Hogwarts on the other side, basically the old castle. And we get to the final episode of the season. Now, I will say this about that's probably the best episode of the show, but really it's only after the Loki's fought, and you get into this little sequence where cosplay Loki is at least interesting. That's really the best sequence of the entire show. There's a couple fight scenes that are at least tolerable, but they're so few and far between. Fight scenes will last like 2 minutes, and they're so cliched because she is so powerful and he is not. Final episode, they're co-written. Michael Waldron and Eric Martin, this talented Rick and Morty team, send us through Hogwarts after our little Winnie spinny, universes form or don't form. We have to listen to Greta Thunberg and other quotes from people that actually matter. And we get to go to Hogwarts because literally that's how I felt. Like I was going in with the big statues. And I was waiting for Dumbledore, to welcome the Lokis. And literally for like 30 minutes, nothing really happens. There's a lot of talking. They finally meet the guy on an elevator. He opens the elevator and he's standing there. That's it. We're just going to go ahead and jump to. By the way, there's not a lot of attacking him. There's no sense of surprise. There's no plans. They're not really wanting to do anything about this guy, the He Who Remains, right? So I'll get to more about He Who Remains, who's basically Kang or Immortus, depending on how you want to look at his timeline. He's this really big bad villain. He's behind all this because in the future, he's the genius that figures out how to travel and control a timeline. So in a world where there could be infinite timelines and timelines and timelines, the versions of him, they collude to get together. But eventually you get an evil one. And Kang the Conqueror wants to destroy the other ones. So that's how he decides they're going to take control of things, and he's going to control the timeline. That's why there's no free will. You don't have any choices. The timeline is set, and this guy controls everything that's happening because if it gets out of control, it will all turn into a mess. We'll end up back in this mess where we have a big fight and a war or whatever. So we all know now that none of this mattered. The MCU didn't matter because it was all pre-programmed on the timeline, and that no one can handle this guy. He can only handle himself. He's so arrogant and such an authoritarian. Kang can only battle himself. There's no free will in the universe because Kang controls everything. Up until this moment, he's given the Lokis a choice whether they want to run things or not. That's literally where we're at. Lokis, do you want to run things or not? That's literally the control of the whole episode. Of course, Sylvie and Loki have to have a fight scene. He loves her, but she kisses him and then throws him through the little doorway. He's back at the TVA. God, there's nonsense at the TVA. All the TVA was a bunch of nonsense because in episode 5, Mobius He pruned himself, but he ended up on the planet too. So everybody ends up on the planet, but he somehow found a car that was running, found Sylvie, and then drove to the Lokis. We have no idea how any of this was supposed to be happening. And then at this point, before the big fight scene of the purple monster, because he has so much faith in the Lokis, he decides to use the little temp pad and go back to the TVA. He shows up, but loses a fight to the woman. Then she uses the temp pad and she leaves. The big hunter, B-15, she's figured out a little bit of this nonsense. She's been on some of this stuff too. But we leave all of that unresolved. We get to this thing with Kang. Sylvie gets rid of Loki, kills Kang. So here comes the war. All the chaos breaks out. Loki looks. No one recognizes him. He sees the big Kang the Conqueror. That's how it ends. Season 1's over. Done. And the out scene is nothing interesting. It's just a stamp that says Season 2's coming. That's what y'all get. That's Loki. There's people on the internet telling you how great this show is. I heard people giving this show like these incredible reviews and how great this show is. I'm like, what show are you watching? This show is so boring. This is insane. Insane. I couldn't believe this. These creators are just terrible. They're just terrible. And they are so full of themselves. So this guy, I'm going to show you this. Let's see. I don't want that one. I want to share screen. Yeah, let me share this. This is one of the. This is Eric Martin. No experience, Eric Martin. All right, this is him right here. This is them praising one another. This is how their Twitters look. So if you go to their Twitter, you can follow all these nonsensical things they say back and forth. These murderer rows of writers. First off, it didn't even sound like anybody had a clue what the other ones are doing because there's so many contradictions between what happens in one episode versus another that I'm not sure I can believe that you have a clue to what you're doing. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, well, it's still not very big, is it? Anyway, sorry about that. Take my word. I'll read that to you if you want. So anyway, this is how all of their different tweets are. They talk about how many hours of footage Loki had been on screen, and it was so challenging to figure out how to adapt that. And I'm like, what did you do? He's not even the same character. He's a UPS guy walking around after you took off he doesn't have his costume. He doesn't have powers. She's in charge. There's a scene. Oh, wait, I'm going to go back to that. So that's a scene in the end of episode 5. We're going to attack the purple monster, the cloud monster from Lost. He's purple in Loki, right? We have to have colors because that's how we do things. And he actually stands behind her. That's how wussy Loki has become. He stands behind little girl Loki to face the purple monster, which we're like totally understand how on earth he's able to do all of that. That's what he does. So, by the way, I want to understand how they can get away with making so many like absurd changes to their universe. Let's just be honest. They don't really care, right? That's how I feel. I feel like Disney Marvel walks in the room and says, all right, I need you to introduce Lady Loki, timelines. We're going to set up Kang, but we're not going to call him Kang. He's never called Kang. He's just the guy who remains, which makes him more like a Mortis because a Mortis is the one in the comic books that's been around for millions of years. So that's it. These are your things. And what the rest of you do, we're not going to police anything of what you do. We're not going to pay any attention to what you do. Absolutely. I don't know. Okay. Let me see here. Comments. Don't see anything here. All right. Don't see any comments. Going to let you know if maybe you disagree with me. I don't know. Tell me what you think. I'm in shock that they're going to do a season 2. I'm shocked that there's not anything really set up that makes sense going to Doctor Strange, because at least that's the next big version of this stuff. And I wanted to go back because the one guy, make sure I got this right, because I'm pretty sure it's Rick and Morty guy. Yep. Michael Waldron is writing Doctor Strange. So Basha K. Ali is doing Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and Michael Waldron is doing Doctor Strange 2. So after seeing this show, maybe you love it, or maybe you're like me, where not so much. You might have some reservations about where they're going with your beloved MCU, because I do. So